Good morning, and welcome to the virtual worship service for Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Erica Bartlett, and my pronouns are she and hers. I'm a member of Allen Avenue's worship committee, and I'm presenting the service today along with help from Pam Jackson and some guests from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Little Rock. Lay-led worship is a long-standing tradition at A2U2, and most of our services for the summer will be lay-led. From September to late June, most of our services are led by our minister, the Reverend Donna Dahlhem. This week, our offering will be shared with Maine Needs. Maine Needs strives to help individuals and families in Maine meet their basic material needs by providing donated clothing, hygiene products, household items, and other necessities. They focus their work on those starting life over from scratch. If you'd like to contribute to the offering, you can go to our website and use the Donate button at the top of the page. Choose the option to give to the plate. You can also send a check to the church. You're invited to join us today, July 11th, after the service for our congregational conversation and coffee hour. To learn more about Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church, please go to our website at a2u2.org.
Call to Worship, A Place of Belonging and Caring by Kimberly Ann Tomczak Carlson. It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource that belongs to all of us when we share. And so you began seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts. Welcome home. Welcome to worship.
Hi, I am John McNee, and on behalf of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Little Rock, I light this chalice with these words by Jennifer Grayson. We light this chalice, symbol of our purpose to bring more love and justice into the world. We light this chalice, knowing our congregation as a church dispersed across communities, not bound by walls, but connected through the web of life.
Many years ago, as part of a senior youth group service, I sang Corner of the Sky from the musical Pippin. It includes these lyrics. Cats fit on the windowsill. Children fit in the snow. Why do I feel I don't fit in anywhere I go? As a teen, I often felt that way, that I didn't fit in or belong. And I can't say it's gotten a lot better as an adult. I also know I'm not alone in this, nor am I alone in wanting to feel like I belong. But what I didn't realize is that the urge to belong isn't only a want. When I began preparing for this service, I discovered that belonging was on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In case you're not familiar with it, in 1943, psychologist Abraham Maslow produced a hierarchy of needs. He was a humanist who believed that all people had an innate desire to become their best selves. But in order for that to happen, certain needs must be met. These needs are in a certain order and usually shown as a pyramid to symbolize the fact that lower levels need to be met before getting to the higher levels, at least for most people. At the very bottom of the pyramid are the absolute basic physiological needs: food, water, warmth, sleep. Right above that is the need for safety and security. This includes obvious things like having a home and not feeling threatened, but it also covers health and financial security. That brings us to the third level, which includes the needs for love, acceptance, and belonging. To be honest, I hadn't considered a sense of belonging to be a need, more of a nice to have. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how important it is. Feeling like you belong makes you feel connected and less alone. You realize that other people have had similar experiences, which is incredibly validating. That's also why representation in media and entertainment matters. For example, seeing members of the LGBTQ+ community in movies and books. It helps others know that more people like them exist in the world. Belonging also gives you a feeling of acceptance and support. When you don't feel like an outsider, you're not on your guard. You can relax and be yourself. All this got me thinking about times in my life when I felt a real sense of belonging and why it was important to me. Here are a few examples. As a teenager, I often felt like an outsider. In the late 80s and early 90s, playing D&D, liking Lord of the Rings, and watching Doctor Who were not acceptable or in activities. Plus, I was fat, and being fat, even if I'd wanted to wear fashionable clothes, I wouldn't have found anything that fit. I played flute, went to band camp, cared about the environment, wrote fantasy stories, and got straight A's. In rural Maine, none of this helped me feel like I belonged. But in 8th grade, I had a rare experience. I became part of a group of 6 friends. The 6 of us didn't have everything in common, but we had enough. I rode the bus with one of them, and she'd entertain me by drawing cartoons on the bus ride. I worked on science projects with another friend, and 3 of us did an English project together. We had sleepovers and sat together for lunch in study hall. During that time, it didn't matter that I was overweight or that most other kids thought I was a weird nerd and the teacher's pet. I could ignore all of that because I belonged. I mattered to those friends. We were there for each other, and after feeling like I had no one in 7th grade, it was so important to feel included again. Sadly, that didn't last. I experienced a lot of the all too common drama and upheavals that happen with teenage girls, with on-again, off-again friendships. The only constant was my friend Shelley, and thank goodness I had that. For 5 years, from 8th grade to 12th grade, we had every class together except for one health class, and yet we could still talk on the phone for an hour at night. She went camping with my family, we slept over at each other's houses, and when I went to band camp, we exchanged long letters. We finished each other's sentences, and it got to the point where I often said we instead of I. I don't know how I would have gotten through high school without having at least that one close friendship. But then college happened, with me going to Northeastern and Boston and her going to Bates. We stayed friends, but it wasn't the same. Then in my mid-20s, after moving back to Maine and coming back to Allen Avenue, I experienced that feeling of belonging again with the young adult group. Me, my brother, and a couple of others first started the group in 2003. And over 3 years, we had others come and go. We did alternative worship services, had potlucks, went camping, went bowling, and more. We all belonged because we were around the same age, UUs, or interested in UUism, and we were looking for experiences that were both fun and meaningful to us. I also personally wanted some kind of grounding and acceptance in my life after losing my mom and feeling adrift when my dad got remarried not long after. The young adult group gave me that. These are just a few examples, and certainly belonging can come in other ways, but there has to be some point of commonality. Maybe it's politics or nationality or shared interest. And in addition to that, in order to truly feel like you belong, the group has to mean something to everyone involved, with experiences that are more positive than negative. And those in the group should want to have a lasting relationship and care about each other's well-being. But all things must end, and some people never find belonging to begin with. Before we get to that, though, let's pause for some music.
Our world is one world. there's a song where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Another way to think about belonging is to consider what happens when that need isn't met. This makes it even clearer how important belonging is. In studies of the brain's reward system, researchers have found that when our connections with others break apart, this blow can impact our brains much the same way physical injuries do. In addition, those who feel excluded often experience negative emotions. Obvious examples are loneliness and sadness. You might experience these feelings when you're alone, but you probably feel them even more strongly when you're around a group you don't belong to. Perhaps you've noticed this too, when you're at an event or party and everyone else is talking and laughing and having a good time, but you feel like you don't fit in. It's probably the loneliest feeling in the world. I remember feeling that way several times, particularly the first Mother's Day after my mom died. Everyone around me was buying cards and gifts for their moms and talking about calling or visiting. And it was so incredibly lonely and sad to realize that I no longer had that. I no longer belonged to the group of people whose moms were alive. Those who don't belong can also experience other emotions, such as greater anxiety, depression, and stress. They're more likely to be jealous. Physically, they become ill more often and may have more eating disorders. These are all serious problems for individuals, but they can become even more significant when large groups are impacted, as we've seen in recent years. For example, the current political divide can be viewed as largely a matter of belonging or not belonging. Some people felt like they were being left out of America and its future, and so when they were offered a clear, emotionally powerful message that they could belong to another group, they embraced it, even if they might not normally approve of everything that group did. It wasn't a decision based on logic. Belonging, like love, isn't rational. All we want is that feeling of acceptance. Others, unfortunately, have had their sense of belonging ripped away. Children whose parents or grandparents came from other countries often struggle to feel like they belong, particularly if they aren't white. Those children may also feel torn between the traditions of their parents' culture and that of American society. And then, sadly, there's the issue of violence. Author Sanjana Satyan lives in Atlanta, and she wrote about the pluralism there, of the feeling that certain areas belonged to first and generation Americans of all kinds, Pakistani, Ethiopian, Asian. But after the shooting this past March, when 6 Asian American women were killed, all that changed. Satyan wrote, quote, "That hard-won sense of home diminished for so many. All I can see is the fragility of our belonging," end quote. I can't begin to imagine what that feels like, and yet I can understand the fragility of belonging. I too have experienced moments when what I thought was bedrock turned out to be paper thin. For example, my dad started dating someone within a year after my mom died, and it wasn't long before the woman he was dating moved in with him. And she didn't waste any time redecorating. The changes applied to the whole house, but I felt it most keenly when she gutted what used to be my room and made it into her nest, my dad's phrase. Suddenly, I no longer had a home. Even though I hadn't lived in my parents' house for quite a while, at least there was always the possibility. Now the house didn't even have a spare bed if for some reason I needed it. Plus, neither my dad nor his girlfriend were gardeners. So the big vegetable garden that my mom had poured so much energy and love into quickly turned back into grass. It all combined to make me feel even more adrift, unmoored from any sense of stability or history. It's part of the reason why I moved so quickly to buy a condo, closing on it shortly before I turned 25. I was desperate to have some place that I could rely on and where I belonged. As an older adult, I've also experienced losing my sense of belonging in other ways. One example is when I realized that I didn't want to have children. I'd convinced myself for years that I wanted kids, even feeling somewhat desperate to have them, until I realized that belonging wasn't about kids. It was about wanting to experience a mother-child relationship again, since I'd lost that with my mom. This was a hard thing for me to face because it meant being the odd one out in many ways. Most of my friends had kids by then, or wanted to have them, and in a way it felt like a further separation from my mom, who loved children dearly. And society often presents women as wanting to have children, as having a ticking biological clock. It almost felt like something was wrong with me for not having that. And as someone who's single by choice, it's impossible not to feel left out of so much popular culture and societal expectations. At least a lot more people are single by choice these days, but it's still not something I see portrayed very often. Both of these things, combined with religious differences, makes it impossible for me to feel like I belong with my mom's family, who were French Catholics with lots of kids. Going to those family events can feel very lonely, too, when I see everyone with their kids and spouses. I think we all have times like this, if in different ways. We've all had moments when we don't feel that we belong, and it's not pleasant. And without experiencing love and belonging, we're much less likely to get to the two highest levels of Maslow's hierarchy, which are needs for esteem and self-actualization. The good news is that there are ways we can help people feel like they belong, and we'll get to that after some music. So if the need to belong is so important, but many struggle with it, what can help people feel like they belong? Groups and organizations can do a few things. One is to form smaller groups where people can interact and get to know each other. Here at Allen Avenue, we do this with things like spiritual enrichment groups, the elder salon, the men's group, and more. Similarly, the company where I work has encouraged people to start employee affinity groups, where those who have common interests or experiences can meet up and get to know each other. Another way to help create a sense of connection and belonging is through shared experience. Here at church, attending services together is a shared experience, and group retreats and events are also very popular. These should preferably be positive experiences, though sometimes negative experiences offer their own unique bonding opportunities. For example, many years ago now, one of my coworkers in Portland and I had to go to our California office to meet with other team members. And somehow our manager had decided that a group bonding activity would be indoor skydiving. I didn't enjoy it at all. And the fact that a team member from California skipped out on it didn't help us all bond. But it did give my main coworker and I something to commiserate about. Another approach is to remind people that they're not alone in their experience and that their challenges won't last forever. I read about a study done where older minority college students wrote messages to freshman minority college students about the challenges they all faced and got through. The freshmen who read and took those messages to heart performed better academically and had improved health and well-being, simply by being reminded that they weren't alone in their experience and they could get through it. But offering ways for everyone to interact and get to know each other only works if people participate, and that can be hard for some folks. Those who feel different, for whatever reason, can internalize that belief. They'll start to look for any way they're different to prove that belief, making it self-reinforcing. This makes it even harder to break out of that sense of isolation. In those cases, the person has to decide to push themselves to try something new, to try to meet people and make connections. And they should look for things they have in common with others instead of focusing on the differences. A great example of this was in a story I read earlier this year called First Words by Varsha Bajaj. It's about a teenage girl named Priya whose family leaves India and comes to America. And Priya feels so different and left out that she simply doesn't speak in school. Some of the kids are nice to her, but she can't bring herself to do more than smile. And the longer it goes on, the harder it is for her to imagine speaking up. Then the librarian at the school announces that she's starting a book club, and the first book they'll read is Little Women, one of Priya's favorites. She wants to talk about the book, but she's scared too. When she sees a group of girls going to the discussion, she thinks, what am I doing? I don't belong. She thinks about how different she is with her different clothes and hair and food. But then she thinks about the book. Quote, I remember Jo from Little Women going to New York alone in her unstylish clothes. She did not let the big city defeat her, end quote. So Priya gets her courage up and joins the group, and they make space for her. And finally, Priya finds her voice for good in her new country. It was a lovely reminder of how it can help to remember that you're not alone, and how you can borrow courage from someone else's example. It's also worth noting that Priya was careful to choose where she used her voice. For her, belonging likely wouldn't have come in sports or music or potlucks. She loved books. And so discussing her favorite book gave her a gateway. Other people find belonging in different ways and places. Also, in that example, Priya wanted to belong. But sometimes people who've experienced a lot of change and loss may not want to try anymore. That's one of the things I struggle with. I sometimes feel like there's no point in trying to make new friends or connections because I know it's all going to end eventually anyway. Even if I know that's not a reason to stay isolated and lonely in the moment, it can be hard to feel motivated to try making new connections. And I know I'm not alone in that. When so much in our lives these days is transitory, it can be difficult to want to start over again and again. But something that can help in those situations is to volunteer. Helping others and giving back is very meaningful and can remind you of what you share with others, while also reminding those you help that they're not alone. I experienced this firsthand when I volunteered for a while with the Cancer Community Center, offering to talk with other women who'd lost their mothers to cancer. It was helpful for them and for me. And recently, I found out that one of my young coworkers, who's around the age I was when my mom died, is struggling with his mom's cancer diagnosis and other health conditions. So I offered to talk with him. And the good news is that while isolation can be self-reinforcing, so can feelings of belonging. If you start to experience it, you're more likely to be open to making more connections, although this also depends on how introverted or extroverted you are. And while it's true that there aren't any guarantees about how long it will last, and you're opening yourself up to some risk of being hurt, in the end, it's worthwhile. As Naomi Hathaway, founder of the group I Am a Triangle, said, quote, belonging is like stepping up on a platform and feeling like you are fully supported, end quote. That feeling of support is something we all need in life, so we can go on to become our best selves. I hope you felt that you belong here with us. And as we near the end of our time together, I hope that you also find people and places where you can be your true and best selves. Blessed be.
Hi, I'm Cass Rifkin from Unitarian Universalist Church of Little Rock. This is the first set of readings for today's service. That is part of the beauty of all literature. You discover that your longings are universal longings, that you're not lonely and isolated from anyone. You belong. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Because true belonging can only happen when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-confidence. Brené Brown. Giving connects two people, the giver and the receiver, and this connection gives birth to a new sense of belonging. Deepak Chopra.
Hi, my name is Dave March. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist congregation at Little Rock. This is the second reading. Being engaged in some way for the good of the community, whatever that community, is a factor in a meaningful life. We long to belong, and belonging and caring anchors our sense of place in the universe. Patricia Churchland. Not belonging is a terrible feeling. It feels awkward and it hurts, as if you were wearing someone else's shoes. Phoebe Stone. We can never get a recreation of community and heal our society without giving our citizens a sense of belonging. Patch Adams.
Hi, I'm Linda Van Blaricum from UUCLR. When you know and respect your inner nature, you know where you belong. You also know where you don't belong. Benjamin Hoff. Beautiful places are not just a joy for the moment while you're there. They will become homes for you, spaces of solace and comfort where you can close your eyes and go to. Nothing you experience will ever go away. It belongs to you now. Just feel. Don't be afraid to feel. Charlotte Erickson. We all belong here equally. Just by being born onto the earth, we are accepted and the earth supports us. Polly Horvath.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without peace, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry.
Hi, I'm Marcy Riggs from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Little Rock. Our closing words are from Cynthia Landrum. We leave this gathered community But we don't leave our connection, our concerns, our cares for each other. Our service to each other, to the world, and our faith continues. Until we are together again, friends, be strong, be well, be true, be loving.